A lot of analysis for the Maranello team, but unfortunately, things remain mainly unchanged. For the third round of the 2025 Formula One season, the Ferrari SF-25 is showing the same lack of rotation already seen at the Albert Park Circuit in Australia and at the Shanghai Circuit in China. A limiting condition that will likely be addressed with the first aerodynamic upgrades which are set to arrive next week at the Bahrain International Circuit in Sakhir. In the meantime, however, there's the Japanese weekend to deal with, where a clear step forward in setup is needed. From a purely handling standpoint, the two SF-25 cars once again proved to be imperfect. We are talking about the usual inherent lack of rotation in the Italian cars, which is clearly evident once again, this time at the 5.807-kilometer Suzuka Circuit. More specifically, in addition to the slow sections, a certain degree of understeer is also seen in the fast sections, as we had already pointed out in recent days in our previous videos. This issue is noticeable at the hairpin at turn 11 but also in Sector 1, where overall the Italian cars performed fairly well. Compared to the McLaren MCL39 cars, which are leading the pack, it is clear that Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc are not able to make much use of the inside curbs. Ferrari chose to use the standard rear wing specification, namely a version that generates slightly less aerodynamic load compared to the British cars. For this reason, as mentioned yesterday, they tried to counteract the understeer by moving the center of pressure forward, also known as the balance of aerodynamic forces, succeeding only partially, at least for today. Nonetheless, overall balance cannot be described as negative, even though there are still aspects that need improvement. Today's simulator work will assist in this crucial goal for the rest of the Japanese weekend. There are indeed some strategic points where the Ferrari technicians and engineers will be working in the coming hours to find small setup tweaks that could unlock performance in specific areas. A key point is definitely turn 9, where on exit they manage to catch up with McLaren, but on entry, like Red Bull, they lose a full tenth. In that area, the MCL39 is very solid. By combining telemetry with onboard footage, the pattern we observe is a greater gain at corner entry, regardless of the corner type. On exit, they tend to lose out to the SF-25 single-seater, which is currently showing good traction. In long, high-load corners, however, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri currently have a huge advantage. Between the entry of turn 13 and through turn 14, the British Ferrari driver loses over 0.3 seconds to the papaya-colored cars, a localized gap that is far too large for an effective lap time. These are two corners taken almost as one, with light braking and significant steering input. This puts tire grip under serious stress. The Woking car is very agile through the snake section, and could probably extract even more potential from that part of the track. They don't have the car with the most overall downforce, but they definitely possess the widest aerodynamic map. In other words, they can extract a solid and well-distributed amount of stable downforce from the floor. Overall, the reigning world champions also showed a slightly oversteering behavior, the exact opposite of the Ferrari cars. In fact, we noticed that in some situations, the drivers were forced to open the steering a bit mid-corner, a behavior that does not seem particularly problematic. Aside from this, the MCL39 confirms it has a very solid front end. All in all, Ferrari is not that far from its ideal working point, but another step forward is needed in order to hit the perfect operating window, and it is a move that could significantly ease the task of closing in on the MCL39's one-lap performance. If we consider the time delta up to the area of turns 13 and 14, the two cars are actually neck and neck. Then, a lot of performance is lost in the third sector. Red Bull has a lot of downforce, but for now, they are not exploiting it. They haven't yet found a suitable window in which to make the RB21 work. For them too, the second and third sectors are critical in terms of performance. This drop-off for various cars from mid-lap onward, however, should not be attributed solely to tire management. Surely, the non-optimal tire compound temperature played a role, both for the RB21 and the SF-25. But we also know that McLaren displays excellent thermal tire management over a flying lap, especially on this type of track with a rather high-energy profile. We await tomorrow's final free practice session to assess performance ahead of the qualifying session. For now, after the first day of track activity at Suzuka, the role of second force did not clearly emerge. The Maranello team is in this undefined mix, together with Mercedes and Red Bull, while McLaren currently seems to be a step ahead. In the morning session, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc finished third and fourth, while in the afternoon session, the British driver remained, and his Ferrari teammate finished 7th. It is difficult to determine what the Italian side can aim for this weekend, as there were few laps completed with high fuel loads, only in the final minutes of the first free practice, while the planned work on the hard tires at the start of FP2 was halted by the long red flag following Jack Doohan's crash. After the second interruption, both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton returned to the track for a qualifying simulation, limited to just one flying lap due to a third red flag triggered by a small fire on the grass outside just before the dernier curve. At that point, the team split the remaining work. The Briton went back out on hard tires with fuel on board, while the Monegasque driver attempted a second flying lap, but this too was interrupted by a final red flag. Charles Leclerc even said over the radio that he had had enough of that session after improving his time by 0.04. The Ferrari engineers and technicians won't be happy with the fact that there wasn't as much running in the second free practice session as expected, but there is still some data to analyze. Obviously, with such a stop-and-go session, the teams had to give up on some aspects of their programs. This means that tomorrow's final hour of free practice that starts at 11:30 will be even more important than usual. The new track surface laid in the first sector provided more grip than expected, and the car balance to be decided before the qualifying session at the Suzuka Circuit will also have to consider the possibility of a wet race on Sunday, a very likely scenario. The wind is another factor to be taken into consideration, and today it already affected car behavior. Both drivers nonetheless gave positive feedback about the day's work. Lewis Hamilton explained that the SF-25 car's balance had not been perfect in the first session, but they had made great progress between the two free practice sessions, and he was happy with the direction they had taken in view of the rest of the weekend in Japan. The 7-time Formula One world champion then added that there was still work to do this evening, and with the weather set to change, they would need to stay focused. He believed they were in a good position and was curious to see what they would be able to do the next day. Charles Leclerc was also cautiously optimistic. He confirmed that it had been a constructive day, as they had tested various setups during the two practice sessions, and he felt he had learned a lot about the car and how to extract the maximum from it. The Monegasque driver noted that they hadn't managed to put everything together due to the red flags and traffic that had compromised the second session, but he believed their performance was better than it appeared on paper. Charles Leclerc added that it would be interesting to see how the weather changes, particularly the wind direction, would affect the following day's sessions. Tomorrow, another factor to take into account during qualifying, which starts at 15 local time, is that rain is expected for Sunday.